Okay, we are ready, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. It is 5:34 and this is the Monday, June 7th, 2021 regular meeting of the Palm Springs Architectural Advisory Committee. Mr. Noel, please take roll call.
Member Thompson,
Here.
Member Walsh,
Here.
Member Paline is excused, Member McCoy,
Here.
Member Lockyer is also excused, Member Dozy,
Here.
Vice Chair Rotman.
Here.
And Chair Jakeway.
Here,
We have a quorum.
thank you. May we have a staff report on the posting of the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, our agenda was published on Thursday, June 3rd. Our meeting has been published in accordance with state law.
Thank you. Does the committee have any revisions to the agenda? Seeing no revisions, do we have a motion to accept the agenda?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Mr. Dorsey, second?
Second.
Was that John Walsh? We'll say,
Here.
thank you, John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. This is a public meeting. Audience members are permitted to comment on any issue that is within this committee's purview. Comments on an item appearing on today's agenda are made at the time that item is presented. If anybody would like to speak on an item not on today's agenda, you may speak now. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. Mr. Newell, it looks like no one's here to speak publicly on a
No,
non-agenda item.
correct.
Okay, do we have any revisions to the minutes of the May 16th, 2021 AAC meeting?
May 18th, Mr. Chair.
May 18th. Any revisions, corrections? Do we have a motion to accept?
I move to accept.
Robert, a second?
Second.
Second from John McCoy, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to proceed to our agenda now. New business, item number 2, Stanley Anderson on behalf of Justin and Wendy Moore for a minor architectural review and approval to construct a 520 square foot detached carport with trash enclosure and a 1,200 square foot addition, as well as minor exterior alterations and landscaping at an existing Hillside single-family residence located at 2481 Kawea Hills Drive. May we have a staff report, please?
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes.
I just want to disclose that I had a conversation with the applicant about a week and a half ago, and we did not discuss any specifics of the application, but just general procedure related to AAC.
Thank you, Mr. Rotman. Now, staff report.
Yes. All right. Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. As introduced, this is a proposed project at 2481 Kawea Hills Drive. The project site is a 23,332 square foot parcel, which is currently developed with a single family residence, which size is 3,449 square feet. The property was originally developed in 1963. And this is just area view of the project site. The property extends from Kawea Hills Drive, which loops around. So it's actually bounded by the same street on the front and the rear. The applicant is proposing to construct a 520 square foot detached garage and a 120 square foot storage room addition to the existing residence, as well as a conversion of the existing garage to living space and the installation of a new landscape along the rear property line. These are just the 2 images of the property. The image on the left is the the view of the property that's actually taken from the Kawea Hills Drive on the back. And the applicant installed a posting to show the expected height of a Texas Ranger. This is a part of the proposed new landscaping. And image on the right just to show that because of the site's topography, the view of the property is very limited. The proposed garage will be, carport will be located behind the gate that's shown in the image. This is a proposed carport design. The design incorporates a flat roof and overall height is about 9 feet. It's going to be open except for the trash enclosure area, which is going to have a stucco application. These are the proposed colors and the materials for this project. The metal fascia and door window frames, the Habra stucco in a dark gray and the coral gables. And just to show the existing stone accent wall, which is subject to a removal, and the proposed wood accent siding. This is the north elevation of the residence, which faces a driveway. The applicant is proposing to remove the stone wall and install and replace the existing sliding doors with new doors, and also an installation of a new door system. The applicant is proposing a custom wood door with a metal insert for decorative accent. And the design of the door will have a wood transom and glass sidings. And also the conversion of the garage will enclose the garage opening, and the wood accent will be applied to the north elevation. And this is the south elevation of the residence. Again, the applicant is proposing the removal and the replacement of the existing windows as well as doors. So the new elevation will accommodate increased amount of sliding doors. And this is the west elevation of the residence, which is the rear of the residence. Applicant is proposing a 120 square foot addition to create a new storage room on this elevation. And this is the east elevation of the residence. This is a street facing elevation. Again, existing stone walls will be removed and a new door system will be installed. The findings, this project has been reviewed by the historic preservation officer because this is a class 4 historic property, and historic preservation officer determined that the proposed project will not create a significant impact and the project will not alter the character of the residence. And the staff finds that the proposed carport design is compatible with the design of the primary residence, which incorporates a shed roof. And then also due to the site's topography, the visibility of the residence and a new carport will be very limited. However, staff finds the proposed Texas Ranger along the rear property line will open the appearance of the street as well as a view to the city. So these are the findings made by staff. And based on these findings, the staff is recommending the following action. The staff is recommending that the AAC recommend approval to the Development Services Director subject to the following conditions of approval. The first one is the applicant to select an alternative plant material which maximum height will remain below eye level, and then also reduce the amount of proposed plant materials to retain natural landscape of the hillside. And this concludes the staff presentation, and applicant is here as well if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Noriko. Does the staff, does the committee have any questions for the staff? Noriko, I have a question on one of your proposed conditions to reduce the amount of landscaping on the hillside. As I look at the landscape plan, I don't see any new landscaping on the hillside. As all I see is the proposed hedge along the upper, the western property line along Kawea Hills Drive. Is that correct?
Yes, that is only a proposal that's submitted by the applicant. So
Okay, thank you.
if my wording was confusing, I guess I should say the proposed plant material is more accurate description.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions of staff? Okay, is the applicant present? If so, please identify yourself. You have 10 minutes to present your project.
There I
Mr.
am.
Newell, do we know if they're present?
Can you hear me now?
Hey, I saw the applicant's name in the Zoom screen, so I know he's.
Yes, I see
I'm here.
Mr. Anderson. I'm
Yes.
getting a little bit of an echo.
Let me try it with headphones on.
It actually sounds better now. You may not have to do that.
Actually, it sounds better now.
Okay, Mr. Anderson, welcome and give us a little presentation, please.
Yeah, sure. So my clients are Justin and Wendy Moore and their two children, Calvin and Emily. They're a young family from New York who purchased the property earlier this year. They're a socially and environmentally responsible couple who fell in love with Palm Springs and the amazing view from this property. We have reconfigured the house plan to work for their family and their modern lifestyles. The additional usable square footage for the house is almost entirely contained within the existing house footprint and within the existing house's overall volume and profile. The south wing, which is currently walled off at the end, will be opened up with glazing in the new master bedroom. This will allow a visual access to the previously neglected stunning view at the end of that home. We will be keeping the existing stone accent wall at the corner entry of the house. This is a nod to the original design. And the inclusion of stucco as a primary exterior wall material will remain, but it'll be in a fresher, lighter tone. And the fascias of the flat roofs will be covered in an earth tone colored metal to match the door, the new door and window mullions. A new front entry from the carport will be added at the end of the great room with an inset brass metal starburst motif on the double entry doors. The site will also add a carport that Noriko mentioned, and a revised swimming pool and new fire pit will be incorporated into the renovated courtyard. As Noriko mentioned, it should be noted the house is not really seen from the road below, and the improvements to the site and house will have little, if any, impact visually to the neighborhood. And planting will be organic and appropriate for this hillside house. And then to address the planning department's concerns for the proposed planting at the top of the site, if you go to 8.01 in your package and to photo number 9. Give me a second to find that. But once you find that, you'll see that there's a white house above and to the right of the property. This house is vacant and in disrepair. The primary reason for any planting at the top of this hill is to really help block the view of this building from our site. And as I understand it, the neighbors have been trying to clean up and get action from the owner for this derelict property for some time now. We are definitely open to changing the Texas Ranger plant species and making the planting pattern more organic as requested by planning. And we would offer up as an alternate sand sagebrush. It's also known as old man sage. And we would do that in a layered organic approach to the location of the plants at the top and moving down the slope a bit. It should be noted its maximum height is 4 feet. And that's one of the concerns, was it that the Texas Ranger could get up to an 8-foot height. So at 4 feet, you should be able to see over it from the top of Kawea Hills. And are there any questions?
Any questions of the applicant?
I have a question.
Robert,
Hi, Stan. Question for you on the landscaping along Kawea. You know, it's a pretty narrow road. Would you be open to moving some of the planting a little bit downhill to give it more of an easement or what, a right of way along that road?
Yes, I think that's what we're proposing. And what I'd like to do is to update this landscape plan and kind of move those closer, I guess, a little bit closer down or farther down the hill, and resubmit that with this sagebrush sage plant as the option for that, if I could.
Okay, thank you.
Um,
I have a,
Tom Dosey.
yes, I have a question for the applicant. Could you describe with the proposed carport, it's a little bit difficult. I'm looking at the grading plan to determine the actual hardscape area and driveway changes that lead to the new carport. And then secondly, to make this all work, it looks like there's some changes in the existing contours or some grading areas. And if you could describe the limits of grading that'll take place, not only to accommodate the carport, but also the proposed hardscape.
Yes, absolutely. The area where the carport is located currently, where we're proposing it, it's a sort of slightly raised. It's probably about a foot above where the gate is, entry gate is, and it's a kind of rounded out flat spot, the only flat spot on the site. It's one of the reasons we kept the size of the carport to an absolute minimum 20 by 20, so that we wouldn't have to get into any grading. So there'll be just minimal sort of grading at kind of the north left side. It should come right up to the hillside there.
And then also, is there some hardscape then that is proposed along the back of the structure?
There's currently a concrete slab that, let me see if it shows up on it sort of shows up on the plan, the floor plan A02.
And the reason I ask, when I look at that, it appears that there's existing contours underneath the slab, but I don't see any adjusted contours to accommodate the slab
Yeah,
on that corner.
Yeah, we definitely will need to adjust a little bit. The slab is currently angled a little bit, and we would like to make it flat. And there is reasonable means to do so.
And you won't be constricted by the rock the rock that's in that area, or?
No, we really want to keep away from touching any bit of that, the hillside. It's a fairly steep incline.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions. I'm curious about your choice of adding new wood siding where you enclose the carport instead of possibly using more of the stone that's on the building as your accent in that location, especially knowing the dilemmas of wood over time on the exterior here in the desert.
Yeah, that's a great question. The existing stone that's on the house, it's very typical of Palm Springs. You see that on many commercial buildings downtown. You see it on some residential buildings. It's one of those stones that you either love or don't love so much. And we are keeping a bit of that stone just as a nod to the house. But the owners aren't in love with the stone. I'm not completely in love with the stone, but I think as a little accent at the corner to kind of recollect its beginnings is good. We didn't want to add the stone into any other new area. Now, the wood that we are adding is a product called Kawea wood, and that will be used on on just the facing, basically it's above and below the strip window that is now where the garage door is. It'll be used there, and it'll also be used on the interior and on some ceiling planes as well. But it's a material that is relatively new within the last 5 years, and it's developed such that it can take the climate, the harsh climate that we have here on an exterior location.
I would question then if possibly you and your clients would consider removing all the stone and using this wood to replace it so that you have a consistent accent around the exterior of the house. And that's just a comment that you don't need to respond to. But my one comment would be the only thing you see from the street is this driveway entrance. And I wonder if it's possible to get some landscaping between that wall with the curve in it and the edge of the pavement, and also to get some landscaping at the top of the wall that might cascade down the face of the wall to soften that wall. I can totally see that you can't plant at the bottom of the wall, but maybe just a little something to soften that.
I like the cascading idea. The area up there is kind of, there are some plants and aloes and whatnot. It's fairly rocky, but agreed, we would probably like to soften that a little bit more and do it in a naturalistic way.
Thank you. John, were you raising your hand? Did you have a question, John Walsh?
No, I just, you've covered a lot of it. I also had just sort of, it was difficult to read the topographic survey with respect to the placement of the carport. I'm sure that you tested the maneuvering of a car, so that I'm trying to figure out, you would back up and slide along the side of the house, correct?
That's right.
Okay, all right. It's so that, yeah, right. It's good.
Okay, before we get into our full discussion, do we have any public comments from the audience? If so, identify yourself and you have 3 minutes. Okay, seeing none, I think we can move to a discussion. Committee, comments, ideas? I'll make the comment that I totally agree with staff that the house really is not visible from the street. I think the main concept is the landscaping along both Kawea Drive on the east and Kawea Drive on the west. I think the applicant's comments about how to modify what appears to be a hedge on the west side is totally appropriate. And I would possibly even encourage them to make sure that the height of that hedge is a variety, a sculpted top, not a cut flat at something height sort of top. And if we could add a little landscaping down below. Other than that, I'm totally in favor of this.
Can we confirm that the existing ficus on the upper side of the property will be removed?
The existing ficus, which is dead now.
Yeah, there's still some on it.
Yeah, yes, that will be removed. I think that at one time that was probably planted for the same reason, to try to block the view of that house.
Okay, thanks. So, and I agree with Tom's comments about landscaping down at the entry of the house. I think that's a good observation.
If we don't have any other comments, do we have a motion?
I have an additional comment.
I'm sorry, Tom Dorsey.
I guess my comment, it goes along with yours, that I feel that they could do a more naturalized landscape along the property, along the street there, using more native plants and a variety of them, again, to create that effect that you brought up, Mr. Chairman, so that there is some undulation in height. And secondly, that they address or restore any areas that would be graded to implement this proposed design. restore to natural conditions, any of the graded areas. Because I think there's going to be more grading done that really shows on this site plan, because it's overlaid on an existing topo.
Yeah.
And not so much of a proposed topo.
Okay.
That's my comment.
Tom, do
Thank
you want to turn that into a motion?
I'll turn that into a motion. I'll make motion for approval with the comments that additional landscape be added along Kawea Hills Drive, and that the areas where the proposed Texas Ranger hedge was proposed be done in a more naturalized landscape using native landscape materials, and that any graded or disturbed areas be renaturalized with native rock or plant material as needed.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
A second.
John McCoy, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're on to item number 3. Brenda Ayala, on behalf of El Salvador Cafe, for minor architectural review and approval to install a 256 square foot canopy structure and a railing for an outdoor dining area expansion at an existing restaurant located within the Sunrise Square Shopping Center at 1750 North Sunrise Way. Could we have a staff report, please?
Yes. Your screen here. This is a proposed a canopy installation at the El Salvador Cafe, which is located within the Sunrise Square Shopping Center. The Sunrise Shopping Center is located at the west corner of East Vicentino and North Sunrise Way. It's a very large shopping center, and the project site is located in the southern portion of the shopping center, and it's one of inline tenants, which is adjacent to a Peruvian restaurant and a nail salon. So the business currently has the indoor dining space of 1,152 square feet and outdoor dining area of 806 square feet. And with this canopy addition, the business will be adding 250 square feet of outdoor dining space. And this is a proposed design that's submitted by the applicant. The dimensions of the canopy are 16 feet by 16 feet with a height of 8 feet. It's going to be, the design will include a metal support, which will be attached to the exposed wood beams. And also the canopy portion of the structure will accommodate these shade sails, and the applicant is proposing the color to be blue. And there are a few issues with the proposed design. The color palette of the Sunrise Square Shopping Center consists of earth tone colors such as white, beige, and brown. With this proposed blue shade sail, that will actually create a striking color contrast against the building. And also the business is closely located to another restaurant with a canopy, which is not really permitted, although the railing is permitted for this particular business. Staff finds that the proposed project meets the applicable general plan and zoning requirements, and the proposed blue shade sails create a striking color contrast, as I mentioned earlier. And based on these findings, staff is recommending approval of the project to Development Services Director, subject to the following conditions of approval. The applicant to select the shade sails, which color is desert neutral, so that the color will be compatible with those found at the Sunrise Square Shopping Center. And then also the specifications of the ratings, such as color, height, and tubing size and spacing, to be consistent with the one found at local charity for consistency. This concludes the staff presentation, and then the applicant is available by telephone. But if you have any questions, let us know. And this concludes the staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Noriko. Does the committee have any questions for the staff?
I think I do, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, John.
Noriko, the management has no standards for this type of extension or enlargement of outdoor spaces, I take it.
Yes, it is correct. Although this proposal has been reviewed and approved by the property management company, no guidelines or anything that the tenants can follow when it comes to a canopy structure.
Right. Got it. Thank you.
Robert.
Yeah, Noriko, has the applicant talked at all about what they're going to do with their signage? I know in the local Charlie's, they've actually moved it to the front of the canopy structure.
With regards to signage, there was no conversation that took place between the staff and applicant for signage. Just so that you're aware, the signage at the local Charlie restaurant that's attached to the entrance of this canopy structure, that's actually not permitted.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Just so the committee knows, I had a question for David before the meeting about why we're reviewing this particular restaurant patio expansion when there have been so many others in town over the last few years that we've never reviewed. And the reason is this is being applied for as a permanent situation where all of those situations along Palm Canyon Drive and the other areas downtown, those are temporary installations. So they did not require a review by the AAC, but because this will become a permanent installation, that's why we're looking at it. Okay, does the applicant have any comments? I don't know how we want to handle that. Can we check if they're on the phone and if they've been able to hear what we've said, or should we just go into our discussion?
I can actually hear you.
Oh, great.
I've been listening.
Okay.
I've been
Hi,
listening.
Brenda.
to the
Welcome.
entire thing. Hi, how are you?
Great. Thank you. So tell us about what you're doing and some of the questions you might have heard that we were talking about your signage and the color and those sorts of things.
Well, right now I'm just proposing to extend my patio because of the fact of COVID. It's been a lot harder for us to have. We really want to keep everybody safe, so we've wanted to expand it as the further, like to Charlie, which I wanted to do in the future anyway. So I figured this would be the best way to start. You asked about the signage. I wasn't planning on adding the signage in the front. If it's required, I would gladly do it. But for now, that wasn't in my plans to extend it, to extend the siding in the front and the canopy. And I know that there's an issue with the fact that it's the nude of the color of the top of the canopy. But the reason why I picked blue is because we're next to two restaurants. One, and we're the first ones. We've been here for 30 years. And Charlie's is a Mexican restaurant. And then we have a new Peruvian restaurant. And sometimes people are always having trouble defining which is which. So I thought that it would be better for us to have blue because blue is the Salvadorian colors of our flag of where we're from. So maybe that might be easier for people to figure out, oh, okay, well, this is blue. Maybe it's not Mexican food. It's something different, which is why originally I thought, but if it's required for me to keep it nude, then it's fine. I will follow the rules.
Okay, that makes sense. Does the committee have any questions of the applicant?
Yeah, I'll go.
Robert.
Yeah, so thank you, Brenda. So do you know the height of, there's the beams that, you've got, do you know the height of your opening at the existing opening? Is that at 8 feet or is it higher than that?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I apologize.
Yes, do you know the height? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, do you know the height of the opening to your the vertical height of the opening to your restaurant?
I do not, but I can, because, no, I don't have it with me. I'm sorry.
Well, because I think it said that you wanted to put this canopy at 8 feet. I'm a little concerned that once you get this canopy up, that you're not going to be able to see your signage. And not that
Okay.
I'm advocating that you move it forward, but I'd like to sort of understand exactly where the canopy is going to fall within the area under your sign or over your sign or whatever.
It will be under the sign because that's like I kind of copied the way that Charlie's did his, which is under the sign.
Mhm.
But I honestly, to be honest, I hadn't even thought about like the fact that maybe people wouldn't be able to see the restaurant El Salvador Cafe on there. So maybe it would make more sense to do the signing on the front as well, in front of the canopy.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions from staff? I mean, excuse me, from the committee? Brenda, thank you. Hang on if you can, and we'll, if we need you during discussion, we might get back to you. Do we have any comments from the public, from the audience? I do want to note we received 3 letters from public people in support of this project that came in over the weekend. Okay, I don't hear of any other public comments. Committee comments, discussion?
I have a question for Noriko, if I may.
Sure, Robert.
So if the applicant ends up having or desiring to move their signage forward to the front of the canopy, is there any issue with that?
The shopping center has an existing sign program, so the new signage will have to conform to the requirements of the sign program. Typically speaking, if the size of the sign conforms to the applicable sign size restrictions of the zone, generally speaking, that should not be an issue.
So you don't know offhand if the signage is required to be on the building or whether, you know,
No,
because when, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. No, I'm not familiar with the specific language of the sign program.
Because there's a bit of consistency between the tenants along that part of the shopping mall. The Peruvian Fuego, El Salvador Cafe, the nail salon, they all have a very sort of similar aesthetic. So I'm just wondering.
If the sign program specifies tenant signs to be affixed to the facade or the exterior wall of the building, then the applicant will have to go through the sign program amendment process.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd also just note that if there's a way in the sign program to allow staff to approve a minor change to the way signage is installed or location whenever there is the instance of an outdoor patio space that might be blocking it, I'm sure that staff would look to do that administratively to avoid having to go through the process if it is possible.
Great, thank you for that clarification. Any other comments from the committee? I can certainly understand the applicant's reasoning for wanting to use the blue awning. It matches the color of the national flag, but also it does set this business off a bit from the others. On the other hand, one of the reasons we work on the architecture is that the building does have a consistency to it. But I think once we start putting these awnings on, it kind of breaks away from that consistency and regular design issue that we have. So myself, I don't have a problem with the blue color, especially because it's basically flat. So I don't know that it'll be a huge impact on the rest of the center. Any other comments?
Chair,
Robert.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I might suggest that they don't do the triangular sails, that they do, because I think they're going to end up needing more structure in between the four posts. And I think that if they do a rectangular sail, shape sail in the blue, it probably will hold up to the wind better because there'll be more places for it to fasten. And yeah, but I don't have an issue. I think they're going to be surprised that their signage will disappear once the won't be visible once they put the structure in front of it. But that'll be something they deal with later.
I actually have a question.
Sure, Brenda.
Okay, so if Charlie's sign technically isn't licensed, am I still supposed to follow his sign? So because you want everything to be equal, like the same. Does that mean that I would have to do a sign similar kind of like his? Because his is different from all of ours. It's actually not consistent to the way that the building is supposed to be.
I think it's the opposite, Brenda. I think if you were to create a sign that's consistent with the signage of the development, then code enforcement might talk with Charlie about making his site comply with the standard for the project.
Okay.
But you do not have to match his sign.
Okay.
Any other comments?
I'm okay with the blue. If the owner believes that it will be cool enough in the summer, the lighter might be a little cooler being underneath it, but if she's comfortable with that, I'm okay with the blue.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or a motion?
I think I'd make a motion, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, John Walsh.
to accept and to offer the owner a choice of either blue or neutral.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, we're
Mr. Chair.
moving forward now. Item number 4.
Mr. Chair, who was the second
I'm
on
sorry.
that one? Who was the second on that?
John McCoy.
Great, thank you. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry, I didn't mention it. Number 4, Hawkins and Marshall on behalf of Carmelita Properties Limited for a major architectural application to construct a 3,665 square foot single-family residence on a 15,173 square foot hillside parcel located at 310 West Crestview Drive, Zone R1C, Section 27. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes. All right. Thank you. As introduced, this is a proposed new single-family residence on a hillside parcel on Crestview Drive. This is the project site. The site is a hillside which slopes down from the southwest corner towards the north. And this is the view of the surroundings taken from the project site. Again, it's a hillside. The property backs onto the steep hills. And applicants proposing to construct a single family residence, which is 3,665 square feet in size. The dwelling portion of the residence is 2,889 square feet, and the proposed garage is 776 square feet. The lot size is 15,173 square feet. The applicant is proposing L-shaped site layout. And as you see here, the property is going to have a garage towards the front of the property, and the residence extends to the rear. So this is just a floor plan. The garage leads to, the garage leads to the living area, the kitchen, And the property includes, and these two, the kitchen, bedroom, dining and living space, and the master bedroom. And there will be an outdoor space between front entry wall and the residence. So they're proposing to utilize this space as an outdoor living area. This is the elevations of the property. The applicant's proposing to have an entry wall, which is going to be concrete, as well as a curtain steel pedestrian entry gate and a garage. The garage opening will be facing the west side yard. And the elevation below, which is the north elevation, this is what the property is going to be look like if it's being seen from the north side. The project is proposing a different building height, which ranges from 11.5 feet to 15 feet with a maximum building height of 29 feet and 7 inches. And then this is the east elevation of the property. And this is the west elevation of the proposed residence. The applicant is proposing the use of different materials such as concrete for the entry wall, as well as a stucco for the building elevations, black anodized the window and door systems, curtain steel for accent, and the yellow cedar for the treatment of the exterior of the garage, and a gray cedar for deck and architectural accents. These are the renderings that are submitted by the applicant. The image on the upper left side, that's the view of the south elevation. The building that you see is a garage, and you see a curtain steel pedestrian entry gate in the rear, as well as a concrete entry wall. And the image to the right side and the upper right corner, that's the view of the opening of the garage, the west elevation. And the image on the bottom left, that's the view of the residence from the north elevation. And again, the view of the east elevation of the residence. As you see, the garage with fixed window. The applicant's proposing to install a different landscaping materials throughout the site. The palette consists of desert museum, paravade, deer grass, agave, golden berry, pittosporum, olive, diamondia, and podocarpus. Based on the proposal, staff has found the following issues. Because of the position of the building relative to the topography, it might impact the view of the adjacent properties. And the applicant actually submitted another major architecture application for the development of the abutting lot, which is vacant. And the applicant is proposing similar building and landscaping materials for these residences. And then also staff finds that the proposed landscape design does not really blend in naturally with the site surroundings. And the proposed design does not fully conform to the development standards such as building height and the use of structural walls in the area that exceeds 30% in the slope. Based on these findings, staff is recommend that AAC provide comments and direction and recommend a possible restudy. The applicant is available, and this concludes the staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Noriko. Do we have questions from the committee for staff? Any questions for the staff? Okay, is the applicant is here? Can they please give us their name, and you have 10 minutes to present the project.
Yeah, hi, my name's Eric Hawkins. I'm half of Hawkins Marshall. My partner Scrap Marshall is also on the call, as well as one of the partners in Carmelita Properties, who is our client for this project. When we first looked at this project, Obviously, it's a beautiful, beautiful neighborhood and a beautiful site. And we had a few criteria, some of which were given by the client and some of which are driven by zoning and just the site itself. One of the primary considerations for this specific lot was the client really had a keen desire to have a single-story home, and that he thought it was sort of imperative to provide something that would be accessible for all ages. And we thought of the two lots, this would be the more preferable site. As we approached the design, we knew right away we wanted to have a minimal impact on the view from Crestview. And so we kept we did as much as we could working with the topography to bury sort of the south end of the property and minimize that roof line from the street. And the idea was to create privacy in the courtyard where privacy for the homeowner as well as the surrounding neighbors. So that's where we focused the courtyard and the pool area. Also because we wanted to keep it away from the descending lot and keep it on an area that would allow for some grading. Now, in turn, it pushed the footprint of the building out beyond the descending slope. And the approach to this to minimize the impact on the topography was to put it up on piers. Initially, in our first neighborhood outreach meeting that we held on March 29th, one of the biggest sort of issues with neighbors was the viewing those piles from the north side of the property. And one of the revisions that we made from since then and proposing now is that structural wall that Noriko mentioned. The only way to really reduce the number of piles is to add a different kind of foundation system for a length that's consistent upon the structural design. So that was actually a response to the neighbors' comments in a way to sort of minimize the number of piles. We had always proposed screening that area with hedging, but if that is an issue, we're happy to revise that structural design again and go back to piles just so that it floats above the topography. Now, another revision we made after that neighborhood outreach was to work with the site again and unfortunately add a few steps to the plan. And unfortunately, I say that because it was the client's wish to have a single-story home, and that was at one single level, and we've compromised, added a few steps, and dropped the roof line on the portion on the descending slope to be a little bit lower to the slope or to the descending topography, as well as create a little bit of a varied roof line, so to differentiate itself from the neighboring lot next door. The other approach was to, because of the topography is a little complicated, we wanted to keep parking access and garage fronting away from the street. So we provided an approach to the garage that was from the side, providing extra parking off of the street because it is somewhat of a narrow street before it begins to descend down. And so that was an approach that's consistent in both projects, although in the other project, which we'll speak about later, we are seeking a slightly different approach, a little bit of an encroachment into that setback due to the topography. This one conforms fully with the setbacks. Additionally, we provided some landscaping that we think, or we thought at least, was complementary. Some privacy hedging that's not too dense, but can be screening, as well as putting in some ground cover along the descending slope that would sprawl and create some stability to that hillside. I know in the plan it looks a little sort of rigid and as if it gets planted in a row, but those plants as they grow take over and the organic nature of them sort of spread, and we could do a better job of showing that in the landscape plan. But the intention is to keep it fairly organic and complement the surrounding nature of the sites. So we would be open to suggestions on that. And so we are hoping for an approval with conditions, some of those being regarding materiality and landscaping. And I think at that, I will leave it to maybe you for additional questions.
Thank you, Eric. Do we have questions from the committee for the applicant? Robert.
Yeah, on the materials, the cedar that you're proposing, are you going to, is that a sealed so that it will maintain that yellow color? Or are you planning for that to age and go gray?
Well, we will probably just based on the weathering and the UV exposure, the cost of maintenance for that to keep it yellow would be pretty significant. So we would probably recommend letting it age and grow silver over time.
Okay. And then I know we have another agenda item for the property next door. And maybe I'll wait till you present that one, but I'd like to get a better understanding of how the two interface, particularly the entry wall, how they line up. There's some elevation difference, what that looks like. So I'll hold off additional questions until that presentation.
Thank you, Robert. I have a couple of comments, maybe more than questions. One is that I don't see on any plan that we're looking at the indication of any piers. And I think we need a plan that shows what the site looks like, not the floor plan of the house, but what's happening underneath it. Where are the supporting walls? What's being retained and backfilled? What's being exposed slope that has piers on it? It's very mysterious to me right now. Also, there's no HVAC equipment shown in any of the plans. There is a comment, just a note about AC equipment and pool equipment at the corner of the garage and the bedroom. But as I look at the site plan, the topo plan, that's about 15 feet below the driveway. And I wonder if the pool service people, how they will get to that. Also, you're showing roof drainage on the west side. It appears that it's just a sheet flow off of the roof and it's not captured by gutters or drains, and it's just falling into that sloping side yard. And I just think there's a lot of areas that need some clarification so that we can understand it more. But my biggest question would be, and I don't know if we can look at it now, but on your sheet C3 that shows the site sections, it shows the, I don't know, Noriko, can we bring up C3?
Let's see. C3. Oh, C3.
And this, where I'm going with this while Noriko's looking for it is, Eric, I totally understand that your client requested a flat house, but I think then he should have bought a flat lot. I don't know that it's appropriate to put a house with a totally flat floor on a lot that has so much topography to it. And on the site section C on sheet C3, you can totally see what I'm talking about, that there's a high spot on the lot and the floor of the house is put a foot or two above that. And then there's fill to the left towards the street and fill to the right towards the wash. But if the whole floor of the house were dropped down to the elevation of 490, you'd drop the profile on here on this, on the bottom elevation. If you were to draw a line right across at the 490, you could see that you'd eliminate all that fill. And I'm looking at the bottom view here. You'd eliminate all that fill on the left side of the house. and all that fill on the right side. And, you know, granted, maybe the garage would need to be higher, but I think that's what this lot deserves. It needs a house that steps with the topography. So I'd like to know what is your justification for putting a totally flat house on a very hilly lot?
So just wanted to confirm you're referring to this same section we're looking at here.
Yeah, it's cross section CC right there. You see the dotted line that shows the
So
natural grade?
yeah, so this proposes no fill to the right of that, right? So it's
So
setting up
then
on
what's going to
top.
happen? That retaining wall is going to sit and you're just going to have a natural pitch behind the wall?
So there's no retaining wall. There are piles.
Those are
Um,
piles, okay.
And the topography slopes
See, that's
below.
what's confusing, and that's where I think if we had a plan, we could understand it. So then to the left, but even so, if the floor level were dropped down to the 490 level, everything starts to step down the hill like it's supposed to, or like it should.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Lucian, please don't interrupt. And we'll have a time for the public to
I'm
speak.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay, any other comments from the committee?
So can I address that comment? We actually have lowered the revised plans do
You know
propose.
what we're gonna do, Eric? We're gonna open it for questions from the audience, and then you have time to rebut both our comments and their comments. Does that seem fair to you?
Yeah, I wasn't trying to rebut. I was just trying to respond.
Okay, go ahead. Give me your comments.
Yes, so this civil plan, because every time we go back and revise civil plans, it costs money. We haven't updated this exactly to reflect that we did drop it an additional 2 feet, as well as that's the garage level and the main floor area that's sitting on top of the sort of level section, and then we step down to the area that's on the descending slope an additional 12 to 18 inches. So it is already beginning to work more, and this was in response to similar comments we received from neighbors.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there's no more questions from staff, we can open this for comments from the audience. Any other questions from staff? Excuse me, from the committee?
No.
Okay. Public comments from the audience. David will put you in order. Please give us your name and you each have 3 minutes.
I believe Mr. Dunn, if you wanted to go first, I don't know if you wish to speak still.
Yeah, sure. So I already submitted my comments in writing, so I will make these comments brief. Generally, I think my comments reflect somewhere Tom was talking about just creating something that's more in context with the neighborhood and that is more consistent with the lot. It's difficult for certainly me as a layperson, and I think some of my neighbors, to view these. We see the renderings from the street, but they're not set into context, even with each other. So the two almost appear as though they're standalone houses far away, and they're not. It's a very tight section of the street. And pretty much everything that's been shown so far in renderings has been pretty isolated for in terms of the renderings. So that's my general comment. A couple of things. One of the questions that was asked in the neighborhood meeting was whether we had taken, or whether it had been taken into account, the slope and the 30% and how that impacts the buildable square footage. It had not been addressed previously, so I don't know if it was addressed in these plans. I couldn't really tell. So that would be something I'd be interested to know. Also, with my understanding on the Administrative modifications, those are meant for minor things, and generally they're for things that, challenges that can't be overcome in any other way. So it sort of feels like what we're talking about so far has been preferences versus actual required needs that need to be overcome by getting a variance or a modification. So those are just some of my basics. And again, I think the overall feeling is right house, wrong location. So this house fits in lots of places in the city, but probably that lot, it's hard to say that one kind of fits into the neighborhood.
Thank you, Jim. And we do have the 3 letters that you submitted previously.
Thank you.
David, do we have someone else?
I'd like to make comment, Tom. Can you hear
Lucian.
me? Yes. Okay,
Yes.
I totally commend what you had to say, Tom. You lived a couple of houses up and you're familiar with the neighborhood. This is a horseshoe-shaped little alcove, and we overlook these houses. I don't understand why they not drop down into the canyon so that the noise level that comes out of them is not echoed off, around all the neighbors. Why isn't this like drop down a story? Let them come into the garage and go down. It's not, the architecture is fine for, South Palm Canyon. This is not suitable for our little neighborhood. Our neighborhood is so quaint and lovely. And suddenly to plonk these houses there on one level and on pylons, on piers is ridiculous. It's going to impact our neighborhood in a very dramatic way. And I think most of the neighbors know that. And if at least they were dropped down, we would have much less impact. So that's it. And I think you sort of nailed it, Tom.
Thank you,
That's pretty
Lucian.
good.
Thank you.
Can you state your full name for the record, please?
Lucian Wolf.
Thank you.
And I look onto these properties and I'm mortified.
Thank you. Any others who would like to speak? I didn't get any messages and I don't see any hands raised. So if there's anyone else who would like to speak, please turn on your microphone and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello. I am one of the principals in Carmelita Properties, and I am one of the driving forces behind this effort. The general look that we were going for initially with these very dramatic lots was in fact something that you find commonly in the Hollywood Hills, that linear modern house, cliffside house, provides a lot of drama, and the drama is intentional. I'd like to remind some of the staff here and the committee and the neighbors as well that we were responsible for doing 1955 South Palm Canyon Drive, which was the 2020 Modernism Mesa show house. Also the one on the corner, which has the iconic landmark gatehouse in its front yard as well, was built at the same time. And the first house I was ever involved in the Mesa, 1954 South Mesa Drive, all very modern houses, very linear, fairly dramatic. All 3 were met with the same argument, the same skepticism about the design. And it was a pretty heated argument. And houses were actually built. They are now revered in the neighborhood. I'm still getting compliments on all 3 of these houses. Some of them are now approaching 7 years old. There doesn't need to be the level of fear about what's being constructed. I think the neighbors' concern is coming more from a fear of change. This land has been there since the 30s. These lots have sat there since the 30s. They're challenging, and they take someone like me that's willing to throw money at it and take a risk. And in my experience and my history, I've been doing this for over 25 years. These lots provide an opportunity to create something significant. I'm not afraid of the challenge. And what we're proposing here, I would hope most of you will get on board with, as it's significant in its design and its quality of finish. It'll be an asset to the neighborhood, as the other 3 existing projects are already.
Thank you, Mr. Rett. Any other comments from the audience? Okay, we will close the public. I'm sorry, did I miss somebody?
Yeah, we do have another person who's asked to speak, Rosie Bacano.
Yes, I would just like to respond to Eric now. When we had our meeting on March 29th, I asked you if you had done any other properties here in Palm Springs, and if you were familiar with the Mesa neighborhood, and you said, no, you have never done any property in Palm Springs. You have done things in Southern California. Why are you telling us now that you have did those properties on South Palm Canyons, those white boxes, and are now saying that, no, you never did, and you don't know the nature of the Mesa?
If I may,
Eric,
if I may, Thomas, Rosie, you have the wrong Eric. There's 2 Erics here.
Oh, I see. I want to talk to the Eric who was, the supposed designer of this project.
Well, Rosie, it really isn't, this isn't appropriate for discussion between the audience and different people. So we just want you to make some comments, and then the committee will be able to hopefully bring those to a conclusion.
Okay, well, I would like to make one more comment, which Jim Dunn has brought up frequently. There are 5 lots involved. We're talking about the 2 on Crestview. There are 2 on Ridge Road, which is my road, and there's 1 down on El Camino. And the question is, you're treating these as individual developments. Actually, it's, 1 developer who's developing a mini complex. Is there any way you can suggest that all of these 5 properties be built at the same time so that we're not inconvenienced for the next 3 to 5 years?
We will address that in a few minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
David, anybody else?
I haven't had any other requests, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Eric Hawkins, would you like to have any rebuttal to any of the public comments?
Sure. I believe it was Jim Dunn's comment regarding the 30% slope and allowable development. The determination on that was that it was related to density and not allowable building floor area. So we did explore it. It was addressed, and it was not an issue for this project.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you. Now it's time for committee discussion. Who would like to start?
Chair, I have a question of the applicant.
Sure, Robert, to Eric.
Yes, Eric, can you tell me exactly what your finished floor elevation is now that you've made changes? Is it at 496 or is it lower?
So we have 2. We have 496 would be the floor area, both the garage now, as well as the floor area on the flatter section, the elevated section. And then as it descends down, the finished floor area is 494.5.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, committee comments? Well, I have a number of comments about a variety of things. First of all, regarding the landscape, I think well, let me start even before that. I've lived in and out of the Mesa since 1965, so I'm very familiar with the neighborhood. I've designed a number of houses in the neighborhood, including on Crestview, on El Camino, on Ridge. So it is a very eclectic neighborhood, and my opinion, my feeling is that people who build big houses in the Mesa usually bought multiple lots, and the houses were able to stand on their own. As the lots that were left become the smaller lots, people are building smaller houses. There's a certain style and character to the houses that are being built, and they do have a less structured feel. I think the houses that were built on Palm Canyon are a totally different situation because they're on a flat lot. They can't compare to this at all. As you look at the lots, the landscaping that's shown at the rear of the lot going into the wash won't really last, because if you look at the existing wash, there are no native plant material there because it gets washed away every couple of years. That's an active wash, and I've seen raging streams run through there. And so I think any landscaping that's done back there needs to mimic the natural landscape that we see of boulders, of a variety of native plant materials and things that just soften that, instead of making it look like a straight demarcation line of here's our project and there's nature. I think that the piers that are shown really need to be much deeper, because I think you're going to need to assume that portions of that wash are going to take away the dirt between the wash and those piers. So I think the bottom of the piers needs to be significantly below the bottom of the wash. But my biggest problem with this house, and the reason I cannot support it, is that it is a flat house on a very pitched lot. None of the materials are used anywhere else in the immediate neighborhood. Yes, they're used down in Palm Canyon. Yes, they're used in the Hollywood Hills, but this doesn't let these houses blend in to the neighborhood. And I think one of the challenges is right now we're only talking about one house, and forgetting the lots that aren't being proposed, but the fact that there's going to be two of these immediately adjacent to each other causes a very big disruption to the quality and character of the neighborhood. And I question the materials. Yellow cedar on that square garage with zero overhangs and southern and western exposure, that wood is going to cup and twist and bend and just go nuts. It just doesn't work in the desert. And also a question in the bedroom that's on the northeast corner, there's two massive walls of glass with 0 inches of overhang, not even enough that you could hang an awning from. That just isn't how desert houses are built. So for many reasons, I just think this is the wrong house for the wrong place.
I have an additional comment regarding the landscape.
Tom Dempsey.
I would ask the applicant to review the plant palette for appropriateness in the desert. Some of the materials, are very marginal. And also, I would agree with Chairman Jakeway that a more naturalized edge be proposed rather than hedging along property lines. We tend to like to make the property lines blur, and even as the speaker or one of the public speakers, if there's two of these, you know, if there's the opportunity to show these houses in context of one another, you know, that are adjacent, that would give an overall better plan. Typically in any of the hillside developments, particularly new ones, there's different boundaries and zones of landscape area, with more of the green material being used up in the private areas or closer to the residents, but then being allowed to use more natural materials as we move away from the structure itself. And then also there's an area on the plan between the actual pavement edge and where the property starts. And I think that needs to be addressed in a future landscape plan as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
I have a comment.
Yeah, Dan Thompson.
Yeah, I tend to favor very modern architecture, so I kind of like the architecture. However, I do think that it's just much too large of a structure for the lot and for the area. And I agree with the chair's assessment of the wood. It's not going to hold up here. And it does look like it belongs in the Hollywood Hills. It doesn't look like it belongs in the Mesa to me. I happen to like the structure. I just don't think it's the right place for it.
Thank you, Dan.
Mr. Chairman?
That's John Walsh. Yes, John.
Yes, I'll comment. In reading through the package of neighbor comments, I mean, they are sweeping and they are articulate. And it's quite a litany of issues, I think, to be recognized and to try to negotiate and integrate. I would agree that, as you said, Tom, it is a mismatch between the site and the building massing and the design. You know, it expresses, you can see it's self-evident in section. It looks to be a missed opportunity. This is a city where 99% of the lots are dead flat. And you just, you know, this is something to be embraced and integrated insofar as the limitations of a design and the limitations of a site should be the springboard from which a creative design is developed. And I kind of think this has missed the mark. It's turning its back to the opportunity. The neighborhood that's there in terms of the characteristics, it just doesn't take long to kind of realize that it is soft and eclectic, and there is a consistency to it. And I don't think that this is a fit at any of those levels. So I would not be in a position to support it.
Thank you, John. Robert, have you commented yet?
I have not, but I don't know that I have much to add to what's already been said. I do have a personal complaint that the exhibits that were submitted were very difficult to read. I found particularly the elevations, they would seem ghost-like, and you really couldn't, especially the rear view, you couldn't really see where the bottom was. And so to me, it seemed a little misleading. And the other comment is that they are proposing to do 2 new houses of similar style right next to each other. I think it would be really important if we see these projects again, that we see them in context with each other. And the other complaint, again, the renderings really did not depict what you would see from across the canyon. There was the one view, but I really, I think graphically, they minimized the actual impact of it. So I hope that if they do come back with another project or a resubmittal, that they take a real hard look to accurately and clearly depict what the project is. Thank you.
Thank you. John McCoy, any comments, or we said everything?
I will concur with what has been said.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
I move to,
Robert.
oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Tom.
No, I was just calling you up.
Go ahead,
Tom
Robert.
Dosey. No, go
Oh, I'm
ahead.
sorry, Tom Dosey.
I'll make a motion for restudy of the project based on the comments that we provided. David, if you need us to reiterate those comments, we could do so.
No, I've got all the notes from your comments.
Okay, thank you, Tom Dosey. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Was that Dan? Dan Thompson? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. And now we'll move on to our last item. Item number 5. Hawkins and Marshall on behalf of Carmelita Properties Limited for a major architectural application to construct a 3,429 square foot single-family residence on an 11,205 square foot hillside parcel located at 322 West Crestview Drive. Staff report, please.
Yes. So this is a proposed residence next to the one that you just reviewed. The views of the surrounding areas, and this is a proposed residence. The size of the residence is 3,429 square feet, which includes a dwelling area of 2,877 square feet, as well as an attached garage, which is 552 square feet. The lot size is 11,206 square feet. Again, this property is also designed in an L-shaped orientation. And the staff is going to go over a little bit more details. This is a proposed floor plan. This actually residence consists of upper and the lower levels. The upper level is going to have a garage, which leads to an entry area, to the kitchen and dining living room, as well as a bedroom and a deck. And there will be stairs that leads to the lower level, and the lower level will accommodate 2 bedrooms and a den. The lower level is accessible by an interior staircase, as well as, stairways, as well as the exterior stairways, which is going to be located on the east elevation of the proposed residence. These are the street-facing elevation, as well as the rear elevation of the proposed residence. As I mentioned earlier, the residence includes upper and the lower levels. The applicant is proposing a mix of recessed and a projected elevation treatment. And when the property is viewed from the front elevation, you'll be seeing the side elevation, the garage, curtain steel pedestrian gate, as well as a concrete entry wall. The overall building height is 29 feet and 9 inches as proposed. And this is the east elevation of the proposed residence. Garage opening will be facing the side yard, just like the project that you previously reviewed. And you see the both stories, upper level and the lower level. And this is the west elevation of the residence. You're going to be looking the rear of the garage, as well as the residence, which extends over the sloped area. The applicant is proposing a set of materials that are pretty much identical to what's being proposed for the property. The only difference between this project and the one that you reviewed in terms of materials is that the concrete entry wall, this particular project proposes would form the concrete walls, whereas the other one proposes the panel form the concrete walls. And the renderings submitted by the applicant, the driveway leads to the garage, which opening faces a side yard. You see a curtain steel pedestrian gate and the concrete entry walls. The proposed landscape in the front yard is also included in the renderings. And this is a view of the proposed residence taken from the northeast side. upper and lower level connected by an exterior stairs. The both levels will include a deck. And view to the right side is actually the rear elevation of the residence, as well as the east elevation of the proposed residence. The applicant is proposing to apply stucco for the exterior walls, black anodized window and door systems. That's going to be consistent throughout. Proposed landscaping, this proposed landscape design consists of the same plant materials that are proposed for the adjacent lot. Based on the submitted information, staff finds that the massing and the overall bulk of the rear portion of the residence appears out of scale and they might impact the existing views. Again, 2 applications are submitted for 2 abutting lots. And the project proposes the use of identical construction and the plant materials for similarly designed residences. And the proposed landscape design looks very orderly in appearance. And the staff finds that the landscape design that's a little bit more natural and organic in appearance will be appropriate to allow smoother spatial transition. And additionally, the proposed project does not fully conform to the applicable development standards, such as the setback of the proposed garage, as well as the portion of the garage which project into the required side yard setback, and proposed 29 feet and 9-inch building height and a 2-story construction does require administrative minor modification approval. And for these reasons, the staff recommends the AAC to provide the comments in the direction, and the staff recommend a possible restudy for this particular project. This concludes the staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Noriko. Committee, do we have questions? Anybody have questions for the staff? Any questions for staff? If not, we'll go back to Eric or whomever it is from the applicant's team that would like to give us a presentation on this particular project. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you. So this lot is steeper and a little bit more irregular in its size and shape. And this was the lot we proposed as being 2-story. And what we tried to do on both of these lots, and I don't know if I mentioned before, but in almost all Palm Spring homes, having a pool is fairly essential. And to put a pool on a descending slope so as to prefer the massing on the higher, flatter lot begins to bring up the issue of grading on that 30% slope. And our immediate response was to try to put the areas that required, the items that required a lot of grading, to put on the portions of slope that were more gentle. In that regard, it pushed the building outward down on the descending slope. And the approach was always to be relatively light on the land and not to carve it up, not to excavate, not to export boulders as much as possible. And that was our original design intent, really, for both lots. This property, in response to, again, the neighborhood outreach, prompted us to lower the building an additional 4 feet below what we were originally proposing. And you can see that in the elevations and section where the garage is pretty much halfway buried. And so the grading, the extent of the sort of major remedial grading is the southern end of the property on the higher end of the lot. As the property descends, originally we tried to stick with the ideas of piers, and so we weren't grading on that 30% slope. Now we're still proposing that for the 2-story portion, but the middle courtyard section requires a bit more fill as it's gotten lower, and the lower level then becomes a bit more like a basement buried on the back side of the property. It's not legally termed a basement. It has more than the appropriate amount of perimeter that daylights, but as it gets deeper, it gets backfilled. So as we go further into that exercise, it's a problem that persists. The more earthwork that's required and the more extensive the project becomes, the more unforeseen issues like big boulders become an issue. So with that being said, we let that determine some of our design approach, and we ended up with something we think is quite unique and quite different. The approach was to be different and unique, and I think this achieves that. Although it does work better with the property, it slopes down into it, but it's a lot more construction, a lot more issues potentially with trucks exporting material, and that's going to be the case the further we go down. So with that being said, we did propose, we do want to propose different materials on this project. We didn't have time to update the material palette, but we do want to go with a different material palette to be contrasted to the property adjacent. And this one as well uses a different style. Obviously the massing is a lot different, being 2-story, but it also has more of a linear single roof line compared to the stepped roof line of the neighboring property. And although some of the plants are the same, this one largely uses different material proposed for the hedging in the form of Palo Verde versus the Podocarpus. Podocarpus is there, but it's more of an accent. But we would be open to addressing all the landscaping as part of, in hopes for an approval with conditions, hopefully as part of a condition. So with that being said, open to questions.
Thank you. Committee, do we have questions for the applicant? Eric, I would make the same comment I made previously about we need a plan that shows what's touching the hillside, to show where the last wall of the house that's on the ground is, and then where the piers are and how many there are as it goes down the hill. Also, I think Robert had a great comment that the elevations, his term was ghost, but that's what's true. They never show the house really touching the ground. And I think we need to have a clear line of where each of the walls touches the ground as you look at all 4 sides of the building when we look at the elevations. And then most of my other comments match what we did on the previous. The other one I would have here, it seems like there's no privacy between the pool of 310 and 322 other than a hedge that's put up. I question also the legal pool barrier fencing that's required around the pool to make sure that that is adequate and is shown when you show us a most probable resubmittal on this. And that's my comments and my questions. Any other questions from the committee for the applicant?
Chair.
Robert.
Yeah, just because you said that you lowered the house. So can you just tell me exactly what finished floor elevations you're at currently? So
yeah, they're accurate as to what you're looking there on the elevations. They just don't match the civil plans. The civil plans will be updated once we have a final design.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Jackway, I have a question for the committee as well.
Sure.
Is this plan more in keeping with what you had in mind with the architectural following the land? The question.
Let us get to that when we have our discussion, but we'll keep that question. Thank you.
And my other comment or question, I guess, is, are you, when you say that these houses should be more in keeping with the neighborhood, are you referring to it becoming more of a Spanish tone?
Well, the neighborhood's very eclectic. Of course, there is Spanish, but there are some softer contemporary houses. There's ranch houses. There's, you know, a large variety of styles of houses in the neighborhood. And granted, along Palm Canyon is a unique situation, and those houses are very contemporary. But those were the lots that nobody ever wanted. Those are the flat leftover lots from the Mesa. People, once they got up on the hill, were more attuned to making the house fit the slope, and because of the way it fit the slope, it then took away from this very rectilinear, square and kind of hard formed style of architecture.
So
okay, do we have any other questions from the committee for the applicants?
I have one for Eric Hawkins.
Yeah, Dan.
Hey, Eric, on C1.1, can you pull that up? It's the topography map. I'm just kind of curious, the house that's immediately to the west of this, where it shows its pool, where does your house, the corner, sit in relationship to that? I'm just wondering how much of their view you're going to take away.
You can see that on page C2. They show the wall behind their pool and this house.
Okay, I see it now. Never mind.
And Chair, if I may.
Yes, Robert.
Yeah, so going back to the neighboring house, 310. So do the entry walls line up?
No.
They are staggered.
Yes, they're staggered. The finished floor levels are about 3.5 feet different, and the wall is in the same relation.
Well, I mean in plan view, not necessarily in height, but in plan view.
In plan view, no, they're staggered.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, if there's no more questions from the committee, let's have some comments from the audience. David will help you come to the queue, but please give us your name, and you have 3 minutes. And if you said the same comments previously, you can give us your name and just say, I have the same comments.
Mr. Chair, I haven't had any requests to speak directly, so if there is anyone who does want to speak on this item, please unmute your microphone and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, David. This is Jim Dunn. I'll just say my comments are much the same. And again, being able to see, as I think you all have stated, to see the properties together will be really helpful for those of us who can't imagine the look of that. So with that, I'll leave my comments as they are.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, committee members' comments and discussion. Right off the bat, I would like to say that
Mr. Chair, we have actually one person who's asked to speak.
Okay.
Rosie Ano.
Yes, this is Rosie, and I'm the secretary of the Mesa Neighborhood Organization. I have lived at 232 Ridge Road since September of 2005. I absolutely love this neighborhood. I would like to compliment Tom Jakeway, who has a certain affinity for the Mesa because he grew up here. He lived next door up to my property, and he built a house here. He built his first two houses at 370 and 380 Crestview. He understands our neighborhood and what a wonderful neighborhood it is. And the canyon at El Camino is dear to all of our hearts. And we do not need white boxes on that property. Or the two properties on Crestview, the two properties on Ridge Road, and the one at the end of El Camino Way. I have to compliment Tom because he knows what a wonderful gem the Mesa is. It's a very unique place. We're not the Hollywood Hills, Beverly Hills, or whatever. Thank you very much, and keep that in mind.
Thank you, Rosie. David, do we have any other comments you see?
No, Mr. Chair, but we might want to let the applicant respond.
Yes, does the applicant have any rebuttal to those two comments from the public?
No major responses, other than previous response I missed to Rosie. She addressed me in saying that I, insinuated that I lied by having not worked here before. I have not worked here in Palm Springs before. These are our first two projects proposed, and understand there's two Erics involved, but I would appreciate if there were no insinuations like that.
Eric, I would like to say officially for the record, we totally understand that there was a mistaken identity and that you have not lied to any of us. We appreciate your candor and your comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to just right off the bat make a quick comment. In the Mesa, the streets, the paved streets, have nothing to do in general with the right of way. They were built way back when, before any of this happened. So on this particular lot, the edge of pavement is probably another 15 feet, maybe even 20 feet away from the property line. So to have an encroachment into that front setback is, in my opinion, not an issue at all. In fact, you can see the house immediately to the west. The corner of that house and the proposed corner of this house are almost exactly the same. And in fact, the house to the west where the garage is, it projects even further into that front setback. So I don't think the setback request is a issue at all. It's just something that happens in the Mesa. Comments from other committee members?
I'll speak a bit to the courtyard. Your comment about the pool privacy, I concur with. In the opening statement for the previous residents, they specifically noted that the pool was cited for privacy for the owner. Having the pools looking at each other will impede that. There's also having the size of the pool and the infinity edges, equipment, the quantity, number of pumps for blower, spa, pool, the quantity of overflow with an infinity pool. You've got excess pumping set up, so noise between the two, I would like to see how placement of systems, what you're looking at as this is developed. I think the courtyard is beautiful in the renderings. I think the indoor-outdoor flow is great. I don't want to walk there in bare feet. And it just feels a little hot. There's no softness, but it is dramatic and beautiful. With the landscaping down below, I think the same comments where it can wash away. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, John. Other comments from the committee?
Tom, I'll just make a similar
Dosey.
comment. I would just like to make a similar comment that the applicant review the appropriateness of the plant material for the desert. And I wasn't as specific in the previous comment, but particularly the podocarpus and also the olive trees that are shown as the symbol is shown as a very small diameter. And I think if they put it to the proper size of what an olive tree would get, or a medium-sized olive tree, they'd probably rearrange those again. And also the Diamondia plant material, I would think there's more desert appropriate ground covers if they're trying to stabilize some slopes. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. To address the question of what architecture do we think is appropriate here? I mean, certainly the majority of the Mesa probably has a Spanish flair or style to it, but there have been some very successful contemporary homes. Don Wexler did a house up at the top of El Portal, very small house, very, very top of Crestview. When Ridge turns to the left, there's a very interesting international style house, long and slung low. Trina Turk's house, the Ship of the Desert, has a great character to it. So we're definitely not saying that this has to be a Spanish style house. I just think it has to have something that's got a relationship to the projects that have been previously built on the hillside lots within the Mesa. Any other comments? Do we have a motion? I hear somebody rattling. John Walsh, your hand moved, and so I think that means you were waving at me.
That's it. It's me. Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion for restudy on this project, please. With consideration to all of the comments that we have made in terms of building massing, relationship to the hillside, issues of privacy. I think David probably captured the list.
Do we have a second?
A second.
And John, if I can amend your motion, can we ask that the future submittal shows both of the new projects and the within, say, 15 feet, the footprint and the beginning of the elevation of the houses on each side, so we get a context for the neighborhood, both from the street and from the north side?
I welcome that amendment.
Thank you. We are moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our agenda items. Do the committee members have any general comments to make on anything? I think we had a good meeting today. Staff, do you have any comments for us?
No comments, Mr. Chair. We will reconvene in 2 weeks.
Okay, at 7:25, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.